Let's do this again. Okay guys, so I've got an NCM Moscow bike here. I'm changing the controller, or if I want to upgrade the controller, this is the process for this. But I'm going to show you how to remove it, install it, and how to modify it if you want to beef it up a little bit. Don't do this if you don't know what you're doing, and this could void your warranty if it's a brand new bike. Now, first things first, you're going to unscrew this screw here. This is holding your controller in, so your controller will now be loose. You can pop it out. This is screw. Pull it out, put it in a tray. Usually your bike stand will have a tray like that you can put it into. Once you've got it out, you've got two cables running up here. You've got one running to the pedal assist, which is literally slide on here, and you've got one going. You've got one going over here to the motor, right? You carefully unscrew this one, just loosen it off. You don't actually have to remove it just to get the cable out, because that will usually sit, what's that on the end of that? Is that a spider? I don't know. That usually sit there with the cable locked in place for the going to the rear, so going up there. You use a puller like this. I'm going to show you how you do that with the pedal assistant in a second to remove the pedal, and two cables that run up inside that bottom part there of the tube. So just in there. So they come out at the top in the two holes here, and there's a rubber grommet which sits underneath here for the cables to come out and go forward. So there's your two holes to help you feed it through. It's pretty straightforward. Right, I'm just going to mount the camera. Okay, so that you can see how you remove the pedals. So this would obviously be inserted on the bike. With that, you take your puller and you unwind it like that until it's nice and long, and this piece is basically inside the end. I'm just going to focus that so you can see better. So then you will insert the puller into the, obviously you have to take off with an Allen key. You have to take off the nut first. This one will be, oops, it's really hard to do this while holding this one will be inside there, and then you pull that out by unscrewing it with an Allen key. You then insert this. Depending on which pedal you have, it might be a different direction, but just insert the thread. Very careful, try not to cross the threads. If you don't know what you're doing, get a professional to do it. If you live in Sydney, get me to do it. It's not working for me now that I'm on camera. It was actually very fiddly. It's a very tight thread, so there we go. So that will go in like that. Okay, so this is, remember, this is still attached to the bike. This is your pedal, okay? So you screw this once you've installed that and tightened it up, and as you can see, it advances the stem, which will force it off of this piece here. It'll push it, push it, push it, and it'll pop off. Okay, you might even hear a snapping noise. Don't worry if you hear a snapping noise, it's normal. It just means you've broken the seal. Okay, so then everything's been removed. Right, so the next step, controller. So if you want to advance to putting the controller on, I'll leave a time up on the screen for how you reinstall this, but let's just say you're changing over the whole controller, well then you would chuck this away, get another one, and then install it. Now, this part is going to be for how you basically remove it. So you take a very thin knife, craft knife. All you can do is very carefully, because this is see-through, and very carefully, I don't know if you can see that or not, but you can see all the wires and the components there. You don't want to hit those, okay? Don't want to hit these, don't want to hit these. So you can very carefully slide your knife. You can already see I've started this all the way along, going down to the controller, avoiding the wires on the edge just here. Same thing along near, I've forgotten what they're called now. MOSFETs. Same thing along there. You're going to go down to the bolts. Okay. Same across here, and across here. Basically, you're going to start removing it. Now, you're going to have to pry this out. You have to be very careful, because this board, if there's a board in it, some of them don't have boards. Some of them are all wires, which I've only seen one like that. Most of them have a board. You don't want to snap the board. So this is the process. So I will show you once I've basically cut along all the edges, what you do next. Just a quick side note, you may have to loosen this off first, depending on the controller, to get down the side. Okay, so this is coming loose now. All I've done is taken a screwdriver and just put down the sides gently, very gently. Just pried it. Best points to pry it on are where the MOSFETs are. This is a fixed MOSFET, makes it easy. So as you can see, look, It's now coming out, the whole thing in one lump. Okay, so I'm just going to very gently ease this out. Okay, very easily. You don't want to force this. If you force it and you break something, you're done. Now you might do this at no avail. I'm doing this for the first time with this particular controller. There's always a chance this has a circuit board that I cannot do anything with. And if that's the case, then it will be going straight back in, being re-siliconed, and that will be the end of it. Now this is popping out lovely, look at that. Okay, perfect, exactly what I wanted. Okay, so this has a motherboard inside. Now you can see, I haven't cracked, let's just focus this. I have not cracked or chipped this board. It does concern me how much silicon they put on these, that these are actually going to even lose any heat. These are watertight. These are completely watertight because of all the silicon on them. So, trying to think where I want to get to the bridge. So this is all your main bridging here, and beefed up board. So what I might do, I might clear this off, just beef this up a little bit, and then see if I can find out where the main bridge is. That might be the main bridge, but see if I can work out where the main bridge is. Just carefully chip away at this, find the capacitors, get the reading on the capacitor voltage, because I need to know if this controller can handle the loads that I want to put on it. So I'll pause the video again and come back once I've cleaned all this off, which you can just do by gently picking away at it. Most of the components can be solid. I mean, look, I can peel this off. Okay, so it's not super adhered to it, it's just loose. Now I'm going to have to redo all the silicons. This is something you're going to have to do as well. But I'm going to peel this all off. It's going to make a huge horrible mess, but we're going to see what we can do with this controller, which I don't know if you can see, actually. This is why I film these as well. Already has burn marks on it from being inside solder. Just on the board there, you got some damage. So this might not be able to take much more than what I'm going to give it. This is an older bike. It's probably been around for about 1.5 years. But yeah. It's partly because it's wrapped in silicon. So what I might do is when I put it back in, I might put a thin layer of tape or something over it, like electrical tape, so that it can't conduct, even though it's an aluminium shell. And then just silicon it on the top, because I think as long as I put a little bit of silicon down the side here, and put this back in, I think an airspace is going to be good for this board here. But anyway, we'll see how it goes, and we'll give it to the customer, and he's going to have a play with it. He's already said that I can do this, and he understands the risks involved, so we'll go from there. One I remember as well, just want to add, don't physically touch this with your fingers. You've got a high risk of getting a nasty shock from it. This will be anything from 60 to 100 volts, once again, so I don't know. But this could technically, especially if you touch capacitors, such as that one there, might be a capacitor, you could end up getting yourself a nasty shock. So just be careful not to cross anything with your fingers, wear gloves. I'm being stupid because I'm used to being shocked, and I know this isn't going to be more than about 72 volts in here, but just take care of yourself, don't injure yourself. For those of you who know what you're doing with electrics, I don't need to say any of this to you, but top of your capacitors here, the bottom of capacitors here, you can't see the wires right now, but I'm about to expose them. You do not want to cross these. You do not want to bridge them with a metal object or your finger. If you do so, then you might end up with a very big spark, fire. You don't want that, possibly even an explosion. What you're looking to do though is to try and free this up enough that you can move it, unless you can see the voltage on it. This is a pretty big cap, so I don't think I'm going to have to go much further. I'm pretty sure this is going to be fine to beef up a little bit. And the other capacitors I can just get a reading on. They look like they're going to be able to hold a little bit more power. I'm just going to make sure the bridges and everything else on the board can handle it. But that being said, these are a nightmare. You can see the design on these, they're awful. I can't believe that you can sell an electrical product with that much, silicon around it. But, it insulates, so it does the job. It's just it insulates everything, including heat. So I think this is going to be one of those things where I'm going to, rather than have a loose box that's exposed, I think I'm going to put something over it and seal any holes, and then just seal the top. So this has got some breathing air inside of it as well, keeping of course the MOSFETs right against the aluminium shell, so that it insulates the MOSFETs, which is where most of the heat's going to be given off. But I want this board to be able to breathe a bit more because it's got signs that it hasn't been able to breathe terribly well. Yeah, I'll keep going. So a lot of mess later, and you can see that I've had to pick around to get to the parts I want to expose. Turns out that there wasn't this end. It's this end that I need to get the bus by. You can just see it in there. So just beefed it up very slightly. We just put a tiny bit of solder and gently drag it along the bus bar. Now on the underside I had some bus as well for the capacitor and for the MOSFET, so I've beefed that up a little bit too. Not so much the MOSFETs, but the capacitor and the bridge between it all, because it was pretty thick anyway. So I think most of its resistance is going to be there. So I'm hoping now that bridge hasn't been touched too much. So this is going to go back on the bike. I've made a space underneath, so I might just fill it back in because there's now an air gap inside here between the motherboard and the controller. So sorry, the motherboard and the aluminium heatsink. So yeah, I'll just fill that in. That's the next step, so that's pretty easy. You just need a caulking gun and some silicone liquid nails. Mirror glass will do. Anything to just basically fill it in so that it's waterproof. You don't need loads, you just need to make sure all the circuits are covered. So I'm going to do that, and then I'll show you the finished product. Okay, this is already used blade anyway, and I would just use that to just basically take the excess off, clean it up, okay, and get a nice finish and seal. Now, don't do what I'm doing, which is cutting a blade towards yourself, but I don't want to use the blade side in case I catch a cable. Just clean up with a bit of paper towel, chuck that in the bin or clean it off, whatever you want to do. Remember, if you're throwing away blades, take care of it properly, and then we're going to put something in between that just to let it dry, maybe put it straight back on the bike. Okay, excuse the smoke. Once you've finished doing silicone, if you want to install it immediately, you can. You put a piece of glad wrap over it like this, because what you do is you install it, keep the glad wrap out of the way, and then when it's dried, you can then unscrew it, just loosen it a bit and rip the glad wrap out. It just becomes part of the seal. Sometimes you can actually remove the glad wrap all the way around the edge and it won't stick out. We're just running a knife along here, and it just helps with the seal. But yeah, that will keep it from going all over the frame. That means you can do an install straight away. So now I'm going to put it on the bike. Just set the camera so that we can do that and you can watch the whole process. Okay, so we're going to start by feeding the cables into the bike from the long side to the display, and they just go simply straight up inside. I don't know if you can see that. You can. They go straight up inside there together. Run the longer one first, and then run the two together. And you'll see a bit stiff, but it will go. Just keep playing with it until it goes in. So it looks like it's going to be easy with a thick cable first. Make sure it's straight, because apparently that helps. It's such a tight frame. Just wiggle it back and forth. And eventually, you'll be able to see the end of the plug coming through. You just put your finger against it, apply a little bit of pressure, or use a cable tie to pull it through, which I might just do to make this quicker. Oops, should I move my stuff before I start this? My favourite trick is just make a loop with the cable tie. You don't have to have it locked, put it in the hole like that, pull the cable back, push the loop into position until it goes through the loop. You don't have to turn the cable a little bit to get it out. There we go, like that. And then you should be able to pull it up like that. There's no pressure required, no forcing. Now, longer cable goes up. I hope my head isn't in this. That's not a pretty picture for the camera. I can see the end there, and it's coming towards the second hole. So, if I remember correctly, these both connect to this. They do. Okay, so same thing again. Cable tie, any size will do. Stick it inside this second loop at the back. Pull the cable back and forth until you get it inside the cable tie, and then lift it up and gently wiggle and push at the same time until it comes through. Now once you've got them through, loop it back on itself towards you and then feed the cable. This, same with this one, at the same time you're going to, this is the tough part of doing them both at the same time, because one's pushing back and the other one's trying to go loose. I'm basically going to feed this all the way in until it's in the point where I can lock it in place. Almost there now. Okay, same with that one there. Okay, there we go. So these are now ready to go and get installed into the battery, and that's now ready to be installed down here. The nut, so I'm going to take the nut out. I'm going to leave, put my washer back on. Just dropped. Just let that dangle, so it doesn't go anywhere. Put 2 washers back on. Right, so I'm now going to put this through here. Don't worry about the guide wrap. And then put that straight back into the nut hole to tighten up. Okay, so once you've got the glad wrap in position and you put the nut in, you simply just go along and carefully slice. This is for a rush install, otherwise just let this set. Doesn't have to be a perfect job, but you don't want this getting caught up inside the chain or guard. And once that's done, you're going to bring the inner cord around and you're going to wiggle that onto the end like that. Just keep wiggling it and it'll go on. It'll flick into position. Just keep pushing it on. Like that. Just wiggling. See, that's nice and flush now. It's in position. It's straight and aligned with the frame. You're then going to put the pedal on. You'll make sure it's in line, so the other one is going this way, and I want this one to go this way as well, like that. Okay, now I need to tap that on. And then you put the lock nut inside there. And tighten that up. You may need to put Loctite on this if you find it keeps coming loose. Excuse me. Okay. Should, if it's nice and clean, it will go straight back on. You might have to clean it up before you do it. If it's dirty, you might have some problems. Okay, so cables are through here. So now you have to put the battery piece back in. So to start with, it's going to go in this way. So fold your cable over and rewire. This only goes one way. You can work it out just by having good luck before you do anything. This goes this way. There's sometimes markers. Let's pop something like that. Look, nice and easy. So now you need to connect the back wires. So the back wire back up, and you have to obviously go around the other side of the bike to do this.
Alright, so on the other side of the bike, and I apologise, the bike has suddenly changed colour and it's daytime now. I'll explain that in a moment. So on the other side of the bike you will replace these two cable ties, and obviously you'll plug in this cable here. Now the other thing you need to do is underneath the bike, and that is, once this is focused, just make sure that this bolt here, the clamp, is in place and the cable that was running to the back of the bike is mounted properly. That's pretty much it. You just double check that that's tight, the two bolts there. Make sure that your cable ties are in and that's orientated correctly. There's double arrows on there showing you which way it goes in. Excuse me. Loctite, and this is tightened up properly, so it's not going to come off. Battery's obviously reinstalled, but before you do that, you need to make sure this piece here, the battery mount point, has the screw going down into the frame, and all the cables are wrapped up inside here. There was two on the previous bike coming out of here, but it's just one going to the display, as you can see there. So that could be fed up inside this bike a bit, because it's a bit loose on this bike too. There we go. That's pretty much it. Now the reason this is a different bike is because the customer and his friend both were going to bring them to me. The friend wanted this one. This is the faster bike. For some reason it was faster, which is why we were doing the modification on the controller for the black bike, which was successful. It did improve the torque slightly, which I managed to do first time, which is great. So now they're neck and neck, actually accelerating. The black bike is a tiny bit faster using just the throttle. However, the top speed is limited by software, it seems. So this bike, even though they both got the off-road upgrade installed on them, which unlocks the speed on the controller, that's the C7 controller, or the Plus model, the controller itself on this bike for some reason has more torque and had more torque and more top-end speed. So now this bike is still slightly faster, about 3 or 4 kilometers an hour faster. However, acceleration wise, now the black bike at least keeps up. So the next video I do will be an upgrade of this. I'm hoping to get a Subvoton controller that I can basically swap out. So I will show you how to do an upgrade, but at least torque wise you can improve it slightly by doing what I did with the shunt and the traces on the back of the board. You just beef them up basically with a bit of solder or wire, whatever you might have to do it with, and it will give you some gains. Obviously the thicker it becomes, the more gain you get, because it's picking up on lack of resistance, so it thinks that the bike isn't basically going as quickly as it should, so it chucks a bit more through. So by lowering the resistance, it tricks the controller, and that's how you're getting that upgrade in your power range. So yeah, hopefully having a Subvoton there, we can improve the top speed and increase the wattage slightly to go into the rear motor. So that's it for this bike, for this video. Thanks for watching.